Welcome to Writing for Movie Musicals. My name is Lauren O'Connor. I'm a librarian at the Writers Guild Foundation Library. I work with scripts and related materials. I am very enthusiastic about this particular topic, and I didn't do my vocal warm-ups, but I will be your musical moderator today.
Where are your glasses and the books? You're a librarian.
I mean, I know. But I'm excited for this discussion for a number of reasons, one of which is it's our very first Zoom panel to actually be hosted from the library. So thank you to everybody out there for being here virtually, and maybe sometime soon we'll be able to welcome researchers and patrons back into our space. And to stay updated on that, check out the website for which you RSVP'd to this panel, wgfoundation.org. Okay, so we have one precious hour, and I'm going to keep my remarks super brief, but just one quick note to everyone who's watching this. If you have a question that is relevant to the topic at hand, which is writing screenplays for movie musicals, there's a Q&A button in your main Zoom bar there. Feel free to submit your questions there, and if we have some time towards the end, we'll try to get to some of those. And let's get to it. I just want to give a huge welcome to this dream group of panelists, and I also want to break the ice. So here's what I'd like to do. Panelists, I'm going to read off your name, and after I read your name, will you tell us the screenplay or screenplays for musicals that you've written, and also tell us one thing about how you write. Are you a morning writer, an evening writer? Do you like writing by hand? Do you like reading parts aloud as you go? Just give us one fun tidbit about how you write. And we'll keep it
boxers,
exciting.
Is that too much? What's the rating of this?
Yeah. Nothing is off topic.
Okay, good.
And,
Are there children?
No, I mean, this is, like big kid writers watching this.
Yeah.
So, and, to keep it exciting, let's go in reverse alphabetical order and start with David E. Talbert.
Oh my God. See, for musicals, hello, my name is David E. Talbert. Let me see, musicals, what you said, right? The musicals. So for film, it's Jingle Jangle, Christmas Journey, of course, but a ton of musicals for the stage. The Fabric of a Man, What My Husband Doesn't Know, Mr. Right Now, He Say, She Say, But What Does God Say? Love Makes Things Happen, Love in the Nick of Time. I like Love. Let me see. A bunch of them. And let me see, what is I write, I close the door, and I write in my office, and when I finish, I print it out and I give it to my wife. Mm. And she goes away for far too long, and she reads it, and she usually comes in the room, and if she says, if she gives me that look, then I know I've got one. And if she comes in and she gives me that stare and she goes, then I know there's some, she's a Black woman, so there's, she doesn't play fair. She knows she has to hit me hard, but then she loves on me to help me get stronger. But that's usually my process. My wife is my barometer, and she lets me know if I'm on target or not, and that has been kind of my secret sauce ever since I've been writing for 30 years now.
Thank you, David. Thunderous ovation to make up for the fact that we can't see anybody in the audience. Let's take it over now to Stephen Levenson.
Hey, I have written Dear Evan Hansen, the screenplay, and Tick, Tick, Boom. And something about my writing, I kind of mumble to myself the entire time, but not intentionally and not really, I really don't mean to, but I act out everything as I'm going, which I've been made aware of by people who've been in the room with me. So that's fun to be a part of.
Very good. Thunderous ovation for you as well, Stephen.
Yeah.
All right, now we'll take it over to Jennifer Lee.
Let's see, Frozen and Frozen 2. And but I've had the pleasure of working on Moana and Encanto.
Don't throw that shit out there like it's just a little musical. You know, come on, don't be disrespectful. Don't be disrespectful, Jennifer. Don't throw that shit out there. Just take a moment and let people soak that shit in. Come on now.
It's funny. Writing. I never was this person growing up, ever wasn't this. I am a 5 a.m. get up when I'm still dreaming, start writing, and if I get interrupted, I'm done. So I try to just go as far as I can every morning, and then if I get interrupted, like I said, the rest is pacing and crabbiness. So
yeah. I'm with you on the 5 a.m. thing. Yeah. Thunderous ovation for you as well. And now finally, we'll kick it over to Kay Cannon.
Hi, everybody. I wrote Pitch Perfect 2, and Pitch Perfect 3, and the upcoming Cinderella movie, September 3rd, Amazon Prime. Check it out. For
My
me,
choreographers.
yes, we shared choreographers. For my writing, I love to just barf it out. Like I do barf drafts, and so I write really fast, and I'll literally put like X's in spots where I don't know what the dialogue is. And then I give myself a schedule. So I'll be like, oh, on this day, you know, you need to write 7 pages. And when you write the kind of musicals I write, which are covers of songs, sometimes like 3 pages are just cut and paste lyrics from songs that I have not written. And I feel really great about myself. And I'm like, I wrote like 10 pages today. And like, you know, half of them are not my work, but and then I like go for I like really focus up and really go for like a long periods of time of writing and get really, and then I'm an improviser at heart, so I'll improvise stuff out like Steve was saying, but I'll also, like, my husband's a writer, and I'll just like pitch him nonstop, and then I just bring people in to help me. And I make them sit there and write it with me.
All right. Round of applause for Kay and for everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this panel. And let's start at the very beginning, which I don't know about you all, but I feel it's a very good place to start. So will you define for us your job as a writer on some of these musicals? Like, what is your role in the creation of these movies? And how might it differ from writing a regular screenplay where characters don't break out into song and dance?
Well, for me, you got to give, the drama has to be such that it calls for people to sing. That they can't communicate certain things in just regular dialogue. That is the thought, the idea, the emotion, the stakes, you know, whatever they're feeling is so big at that moment where they must sing. And that's probably the biggest difference for me in the movie musicals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, you know, it was interesting because I learned a lot when I first came onto Frozen, was asked to join. I had all these Howard Ashman videos and was really just being saturated from our head of music, Chris Montan, on everything about musicals. And the biggest thing of all is, even thematically, it has to be singable. You know, truth can be turned into a singable word if the emotion, there's an emotional point of view behind it, but understanding that you're really looking for singing, it's coming from an emotional theme. And so looking at, you know, what was an action adventure and turning that into a musical, and looking for the themes of fear versus love that you and the songwriters could see all the meat in for singing, that was a completely different process from where you just start with a character. You know, that was really different.
My process with Cinderella is very similar to doing a regular, you know, non-musical screenplay, because I treated every song like dialogue on the page. So it was a bit of a puzzle. I had to find the right song. There's original music in Cinderella, but it's mostly covers. But I don't want them to feel like covers. I wanted them. They had to fit. They had to make sense to the story, and they had to heighten the story. They were very much part of the story. Like I'm saying, they're dialogue on the page. So that was like quite difficult. Like that was a puzzle that, like, you know, like even down to the finale, I was just like, I was in production and I still didn't know what the finale was going to be, or, you know, or I was right before starting production. And it's just like, what is the, you know, like it was, because that had to complete the story, you know, and heighten it in the way that I needed it to heighten it. So that was a bit tricky. And then with pitch, they don't just break into song. I mean, they did a couple of times, but for the most part, they were doing performances on a stage that were, you know, planned. So it wasn't that I didn't have to like maybe do the work that Jennifer and David are talking about, of just like where they have to sing, right? Like within the scene.
Yeah, the most unique process I've been a part of with the musical screenplay is Tick, Tick, Boom, which began as a monologue that Jonathan Larson wrote to perform himself in 1991. I think about being a failed musical theater writer, turning 30 in 1990. And it's basically just, you know, this autobiographical thing that he wrote. And it was eventually turned into a 3-person show after his death. He died very tragically, for those who don't know, in 1995, after the night before the first performance of Rent, which he wrote. And so the whole thing is kind of shadowed by that terrible tragedy that obviously he doesn't know is coming. But what was cool was we kind of went back to that original solo show and had to figure out how to capture the essence of a solo show in the movie. We really wanted to keep that feeling of John performing the story himself, but also telling the story in a cinematic way. And it was really fun because he left behind all of these incredible songs, and it was really just about, again, I think Kay said, like a puzzle. Like musicals often feel like a puzzle, I think, whether they're original or not. Like it's very, your job as a screenwriter or as a book writer is often to solve problems, I think, and to you know, like, it's not always the most romantic job. It's often just kind of like making the connections and building the connective tissue between things. But if you don't do that job, it doesn't work. So that's the fun part.
What I found, like in all of your work, which I think is so amazing, is the magic you guys have found in your scripts. You know, like it feels like magic. You watch Jingle Jangle, you watch Frozen, you watch, you know, I can only imagine with Dear Evan Hansen of just like that. That's what makes it so special, is like you've tapped into something in your screenplay where you really feel the magic, and so it's something you love and aspire to, you know.
Oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it's, and thank you. I think it's important too that people want to write musicals is to watch the musicals that you love and watch ones that you don't know. I mean, you know, I sat in New York. I mean, I watched from Pitch Perfect. I was in a theater over there, and we were at the screening because I directed another movie for Universal, I think where you were doing maybe the second one. And I was watching, I mean, I would study Frozen and all the songs there. And I was on Broadway to watch Dear Evan Hansen, but I sat there, and the DNA and some of the things that worked, you can learn a lot about writing your own just by watching the ones that are successful and work, and do your homework that way. So there's a lot to be gained that way.
And that is the perfect segue into my next question, which is, if I was brand new to the movie musical form, David, you kind of answered this a little bit, but what would be on your curriculum for me to watch? What have been like what movies have been your greatest teachers?
Mine was well, it was as a child, 'cause I think the things that are kind of etched in your brain as a child, they kind of stay in there. And mine was it was Willy Wonka and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And I can sing. I mean, when my son was born, I sat him down to watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and it's my favorite. I mean, and so I'm sitting there, hi ho, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. My son, you know, little black boys look at this big old black father singing the lily whitest songs you have ever heard in your life. But I know all of them, and I'm unapologetic with them. So when it came time for me to write Jingle Jangle, as I'm showing him the classics that I watched, I realized that none of these films had anybody that looked like him in them. And so I know you said we only got an hour, but I'm third generation child preacher, so you know I could talk for a whole hour myself. But I don't even know what the hell your question was. I just want to tell you what I had to say about my life. I hope I answered it. Bye, I'm done.
The Gospel of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
That's it.
I do think there is no better place to start than I would go back to my childhood and the Disney musicals that I grew up with. I mean, those Howard Ashman, speaking of, like those are perfect movie musicals. Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Frozen and Moana and Frozen 2 are also, I feel like, part of that lineage. And there's something about the animation that makes it, I think, easier to sort of see how it works for some reason, at least to my head. Like it made sense to me when someone explained to me how the I Want song functions when they pointed to Little Mermaid in a way that really clicked for me, maybe because it's like buried in my unconscious somewhere. And then on the total end of the spectrum, I would say the movie of Cabaret is an incredible movie musical, and comparing it to the stage musical is really instructive. And the changes that they made and the way that movie, I think like all the best movie musicals are movies first and foremost. Like, and that is a great example of a great film that has a musical element, like, but it doesn't feel like something from a stage that was shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the thing with Disney film, and I say this as a student of it, as much as I got to work on Frozen, but it was because the number one thing that Howard Ashman would teach you about is that the song needs to be a continuation of the story. It either deepens a character or makes them have a choice or makes them move forward. And I think that you see that in the classic Disney films, and I certainly came in with that schooling. And I think, but to also what Stephen said about, I go to West Side Story. I know there's another one coming, but seeing that, because I saw that before I saw on any stage, but that one for me resonated a lot when I was young, and some of the live action Singing in the Rain and things like that. So the love of sort of older musicals that were brought to film. But I think when it comes to looking at films, I think Stephen else said this too, like film musicals versus Broadway musicals put to then turn into a film. That's an area that's can be really complicated. And it's kind of interesting to look at which ones do that successfully and which ones you kind of leave going, why didn't I feel what I was meant to feel? What's going on? And so there's a lot of looking at those comparisons that I think are also important, and asking the question, like, how is it making me feel? Like, when is it making me feel? And when it's not, why not? Because I think it'll help you with your writing, because those two wrestle, those two spaces.
For me, it's a West Side Story is a big one for me, but the quintessential film that I watch all the time is Chicago, because I felt Chicago to me was like a modern version, I guess, of a movie musical, where I felt like, and I agree also, like it's really interesting to watch like Rent on Broadway and then watch what they did with the movie, or In the Heights and then see what they did with the movie, and the changes that they had to make because it went from stage to screen. Chicago to me was one of those times where I was like, I personally, and maybe this is sacrilege, but I love the movie more than I love the stage. I just felt like it was just the way the camera moved, and just stylistically, there was like a style to it that I was really drawn to, and was like, oh, you can do that. Like, oh, and you know, I'm still feeling all the things I need to feel, but it's just intense and cutting, and just felt really modern. So that would be like I also think it'd be interesting to go from the original classics and see how things have changed over the decades. We might be a little too cutty now or something. I don't know, but and how the world has changed.
Yeah.
Funny, because you said that. I went and watched when our choreographers, we share the same choreographers, Ashley Wall and Jen, who's oh my God, I love those two. We watched the MGM musicals, you know, 40s and 50s, and where you would live in master shots and you would allow full body choreography.
Yeah.
And so our idea was, you know, when it's time to direct it, you know, is to pull that camera back as far as we possibly can and let people see the artistry that's in the choreography. Yeah. And not just get seduced by so much intercutting and things like that. And I think it helps sell the spectacle, you know, of what people come to see when they come to see a musical put to film.
Yeah. And you know, when I write, I didn't direct the pitches, I directed Cinderella, but I write very visual. Like I'm very specific, and maybe to a director's chagrin, you know, like, but I feel like that was like really important to show like the whole story, and to like show like the choreography in a wider way that's not as cutty, you know, to show the spectacle and the sometimes a lot of times I'd get notes from producers of like cut it, you know, like people's attention span is this, so you know, like. And I really fought against that, you know.
Good for you. Good for you.
I mean, I tried. I mean, like, you know.
Yeah, people come and they see a musical. When they're coming to see a musical, this is surreal. This is reality on steroids. In real life, if somebody starts talking to me and then they start singing, I'm looking. I'm trying to see where I get the hell out of there, you know. So it's already something that is real life on steroids. And so, you know, live in that and allow it to be that in its fullest version of that.
Let us see these 60 dancers all like doing their thing. That's exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Okay. So do you ascribe to any specific rules or criteria about what makes a musical work on screen? Is there anything, let me put it this way, is there anything that like really doesn't work for you when you see it in a movie musical that you try to avoid in your own stuff?
Well, I'm not a fan of people starting to talk to me and then start to sing. When I'm just not a fan of that, you know. I think there are people that love musicals and you can do any form and that is traditional. And then I think there's a large section of people that like when they say musicals, that's not for me. So when it came time to, you know, to do this musical, I told everybody, I'm like, in my opinion, people that don't like musicals are sitting with that remote control. And if that thing says musical on there, give them, they're waiting for a reason to click out of this and turn out. And I'm like, they got the hand on the remote control. We got to make sure that they put that remote control down and say, oh, I'm pulled into the drama. I'm pulled into the narrative. I'm pulled into the character. So that's one thing for me when you do a musical. I'm going to make sure you don't have a reason to click off of that. You know, musically, our first song was This Day. It was written, you know, I put in a Sunday service choir, I put in 808s, I put in 150 international people dancing. You wasn't going to turn off of that damn television on that first song. Now, you may have turned away after the second song, but damn it, you was going to, that algorithm in Netflix, them first 5 minutes is going to be the highest rated movie of all time after that first song. And so that's my philosophy going into it.
Love that.
I think Chicago is a really good example of what I think you kind of have to do with a movie musical today, which is, I think you used to be able, like a long time ago, like people would go to a movie and it would be okay for somebody to open their mouth and start singing. There was the way on a Broadway stage, I think you can still do that. People would start singing, and there's the form kind of allows that. And I think in a movie musical today, you really have to figure out the concept and the idea behind the singing and really ground it in something. And keep a very consistent vocabulary, or it starts to get really confusing. And that, I think, is an added challenge. Like you kind of can't take for granted that the audience is going to go with you.
I think one thing that's interesting in adapting is recognizing what needs to be accomplished on the stage is different on film. And I always think of the power of the close-up in a film. And I think sometimes we can leave everything at an 11, not realizing that on the stage, if you're going to show someone's trepidation, you have to sing it. And then recognizing on film, you can get it in a single shot. So don't stall the audience with something. So asking that question of what is the intent here? And can that intent be accomplished without music? Then don't sing. Because it'll hurt the song. And so it's a sad thing that you look at, when we went the other way with Frozen, we went from 7.5 songs to 22 songs for Broadway. That's a big part of it, is what we could get across in film. You need the song and the power of the stage to reach that audience. You need to sing. But if we were going in reverse, it's a lot to realize that you might have to cut 22 songs down to 8 to 10. But making sure you're doing it so that what you want people to feel is the most important thing versus, oh, but I love that song. And that it's like that horrible Kill Your Darlings, but in a different way, I think.
Yeah. I come from a comedy. I'm a comedy person, right? Who happened to have like fallen into doing movie musicals. But so I kind of sneak in the things that bother me or that I might get annoyed. I try to sneak them in with jokes. So I do the thing that can be that I considered maybe cheesy, but I call it out. So like it's in the teaser, so I'm not giving anything away, but like the Fab G for Cinderella asks her if she wants to go to the ball, and she's like, yeah, I was just crying and singing about it 2 minutes ago. So that it's like it's just constantly like, I felt like with Pitch Perfect 2, it was just like kind of making fun of, and that's just not with musicals, that's also with like comedies in general, or teams of people, like what's the iconic pool scene in any kind of teen comedy, and like try to find a way to turn that on its head and call it out in a comedic way.
You did great with that. Those movies were so accessible. Those movies were so accessible.
Oh, fun. Thanks.
Very well done.
Thank you.
So the question that often gets asked at panels like this is, what comes first, the songs or the story? And I have to imagine it's the story, but correct me if I'm wrong. So my question is, how do you build a story, and how do you identify moments within that story that make good numbers?
You give me a good song, I'm gonna find somewhere to put that in the movie somewhere. I mean, I don't care. I gotta write a tag after the credits at the end. A good song drives everything. And a good song, it cleans up a multitude of faults. A good song. So you get a good song, if you're blessed by hook or crook to get a good song, you figure out the narrative to make that shit work in the story. That's my opinion.
Well, I think you hit on that. No, go ahead, Kay.
I should have probably followed that, because I'm the opposite of what David just said. It is always story. If it does not fit, I don't want it. Don't even ask. And like in Cinderella, I'm not going to give any of the songs away, but the 2 performances I cut that we shot, that I spent a ton of time in prep on and a lot of money, they were giving to me as studio notes, and I fit them into the story. But they didn't actually forward story. They were just big, awesome, amazing songs. But at the end of the day, the movie was long and I had to find where to cut, and where do I cut is when it doesn't contribute to the story. And when you're talking about pacing and stuff like that. So, and then I was like, I knew it. You made me waste my time filming these other songs that, you know, like when I should have been worried about other stuff. But I'm always like, what is the story? And even the song has to like be a part of the story and heighten to what Jennifer was saying, like you know, like make it has to like make sense to me.
You're my hero. I could have been
directing. I wish I would have done that.
I could have been directing Boys in the Hood. If Alan Menken would have given me Beauty and the Beast, Tale as Old as Time, I would have found a beast to put in there and a beauty. I don't give a damn. It was in the middle of the scene with Ice Cube, and you're like, why are they singing Tale as Old as Time? Because it's a good damn song. That's my point.
But that's, I think the chicken and egg is what we always say at Disney, because, and I've never done, I know, you know, some people, it's like a spec where I've written my own songs, or what I've done is spot songs and been always wrong. So there's a little bit of going, when you're alone and you think what sings, and then you get it in front of incredible songwriters and they go, that's not a song, you listen, but you do drive with story, and then you get a new song and you reinvent it from there. And so I always tell the story of Let It Go came in a few months into writing, and I had to completely restructure the whole movie around that song, because you knew that song was so significant, and it opened up Elsa in a way we didn't ever imagine for her. And if it weren't for that discovery, and we hadn't been flexible, we might have thrown out our best song because the story was so different at the time. But it is, if you get to be working with the songwriters from the start, that chicken and egg is it's always nebulous and frustrating and exciting at the same time. But necessary, I think.
So glad I didn't write Frozen, because Let It Go would have never happened. Or...
No. I think when you hear it and you go, oh, okay, I got to rewrite the whole thing.
My experience is exactly like that, where at a certain point, for me at least, you start with story, then the music comes in, and then something weird happens where you kind of forget where one started and the other one stopped. And we had a similar thing with the song Waving Through a Window in Dear Evan Hansen, which was like, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 years into working on it that song came about. And there was always this idea in the story that Evan worked as a park ranger that summer. And then Benj wrote the lyric about when you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? And suddenly we were like, well, what if you really fell out of a tree? Like, it was kind of a weird idea that we started thinking about. And then he suddenly had a cast. And then suddenly that became this, obviously, if you know the show, like an integral part of the story. But I don't know where that came from. You know, it was like little breadcrumbs that we had left for ourselves that you suddenly go back to, and you're like, oh, that's it. I love that alchemy that happens.
Yeah, for me, I started writing a story of Jingle Jangle in 1997. And I probably had 5 or 6 versions of songs for it, but they were never the right songs. So I had the characters, Veronica's Jangle and Journey and the robot, and I had all the world, but it was a musical. So without the music, what was it? And so then Julia Michaels, my music supervisor, introduced me to Phil Lawrence, who wrote all the Bruno Mars songs, and we hit it off. And he called me over to his house and played for me Possible, and I'm like, oh snap, we got something here. And I remember, Jennifer, I told him, he said, what are you looking for? I said, damn it, I said, we got to let it go. I said, you got to give me something. I said something, and he said, listen, Let It Go. We were listening to that, and I said, I need something big like that feels like it's on stage, but feels like it could be on radio, a pop record as well. And because I said, that's what musicals, feel to me now. And that's what he did. And then John Legend, I sat with him, and he gave me Make It Work. And then the movie, from the music, the musical takes on its attitude. It's informed. Its DNA comes from that music. It starts shaping the story, and then that's how it came to life.
It's another good segue into what I wanted to talk about next. So we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but just tell us about the genesis of a number from one of your movies and how it came from your writing or story development. I know we've heard a little bit of that, but I live for those kind of anecdotes. So the more we can fill this this panel with them, the happier I'll be.
I always start. I'll let you, Stephen. You have better hair.
No, I was just thinking my hair is a mess.
No, I would die. I swear. I want your hair. I want Jennifer's hair. Just a mashup of the two, please.
I would like your beard. I feel like, but I don't know if I would trade.
Well, I tell my son. He says, you know, Daddy, what happened to your hair? And I said, well, it was up there. I just pulled it down on my face. Now he's 8. He still halfway believes that's real, but anyway, I'm done.
Well, the song, you brought this up before we started doing this actual panel, David, but the song So Big, So Small in Dear Evan Hansen, which is a song that his mom sings to him, came about because we were at a point in the development of the musical and we knew there needed to be a song there. We knew that moment was crying out for, because a big decision needed to be made at that moment, and somebody had to kind of pull the story in a new direction.
She sung the life out of that song, man.
Yes.
My God.
And so I went home and wrote a scene that culminated in a big chunk of monologue that was essentially the story that became the song, you know, about this rental truck in the driveway and putting him to bed at night. And I brought that in knowing that would become a song. It wasn't like, this is my amazing monologue. It was like way overwritten and a mess, but it was like, here's an inspiration or something. And that's how that happened. And that often, I feel like, is the process, or it has been the process for me, is you give songwriters huge chunks of overwritten text and go, I think this might be a song. And then they take the parts that work, they make it better, and they turn it into something amazing.
My process comes from songs. You know, I grew up in a holiness church, so everybody's pastors and preachers in my family, and you know, the Bad Black plays, they're historic in the Black community. I think I played the Christmas tree, and I was a really good one. But anyway, nobody could act in the Black church, but the brother that sat at that organ, and you got my grandmother saying, that's all right, baby, let the Lord use you. And after, what happens is there's a feeling, there's a spirit, there's a soul, there's something that is, and so where I start with any songwriter is, I don't really care what these lyrics are. I want to know, am I feeling it? I start from a place of, is it touching my soul? Is it moving me? Is it, and if Phil will play a chord, or Davey Nathan, who wrote the music, played a chord, or John Legend sat there and played a chord, I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me. And then they moan a little bit. I'm like, oh man, I'm back in church again. Now, if you can make these lyrics say anything that connects this story, then we got something. So I start from a place of spirit and feeling the moment. And then I move to lyrically what it needs to say from there.
I'll mention one that a lot of people don't know about, because we always talk about Let It Go, but Do You Want to Build a Snowman? Was a very simple little song, and it was kind of repetitive, and it got, I'm not acting like I didn't have a part in this, it got cut. But part of it was cut because it was
Kay was on the line. She was telling him,
I didn't
don't have anything to do with it. Why would they build a snowman? Yeah. Cut it.
But this is such the moment where I say that the experience of getting to actually work with the songwriters, because Bobby Lopez was in town. So we just went into a small room, and he had a keyboard, and we kept saying, it's missing its gravitas, it's missing Elsa. And so we're like, what does Anna sound like? And that was da 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 da. What does Elsa sound like? And there was the sort of minor Let It Go. And then we just kept going back and forth, and suddenly writing sort of deeper story for in the evolution of Anna, and then the evolution of Elsa, which could not be sung because she was so restricted, and doing that together. And all of a sudden we found the let it go, the let it go, this, do you want to build a snowman, that it's there, how they grow over time and how you see the differences and the breaking of the relationship. All of that happened because we were able to sit together and just talk about, what does this feel like? What does that feel like? And this was the 11th hour. I mean, that song was one of the first ones to come in and then was out all the way until the final screening. And we solved it, but it felt like that solve was very hard won. And it was just not stopping, but getting to use what Bobby can do and just sit and be inspired by that. And so I'll always, for as much as like that, the journey of Frozen and Frozen 2 are their own things, I always remembered that as the moment that I really connected with, going, this is why I'm hooked and I will sign up for Frozen 2 because I love this process, you know. But it you know, it's not for the faint of heart.
I think
I felt that, you know,
yeah.
those songs I felt, you know, I mean, yes, they were melodically wonderful, but I felt it, and it pulled me in, made me lean in. So masterful job with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, it helps to have
like
incredible songwriters. So I take no credit.
That's you're like, thank you. I definitely come from a place of feeling as well, and the tone of what I want. I'm very specific in the script to the, and then have many conversations with the writers, the songwriters, and I'll even put like lyrics that I just think of to just be like, this is the vibe, this is what I want you to do. And like with Cinderella, we have an original Camila Cabello co-wrote, and they went away and then they like played it for me, and I was like, yes. And it was like one of those things where it was like, oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe that, you know, I mean, there was notes and stuff like that, and they made it better, but it really worked. And then like sometimes like with Pitch Perfect 2, when it comes to that feeling or something like that, I remember Jason Moore and I and the group, we were like improvising this, like when Fat Amy is like trying to go to Bumper and like, you know, say she's sorry, and she's on a, you know, she's in the water on a boat and everything. And I just like, just the feeling, I was just like, we belong to the, like it just came. And normally that would just be a first thought. And it would be like, well, that's not gonna be the song, that's the placeholder, because that's the feeling that we had. And then it ended up being the thing, which was really nice. But I'll tell a very quick, funny story about Cinderella, which is I have a town crier that gives the exposition, moves it forward, right? And so, all through raps, a very Hamilton style kind of vibe. And I wrote the raps and cast Missy Elliott. So I wrote the raps with the intention of going, here, Missy, you will rewrite these because you're Missy Elliott and you're gonna do a much better job than I could ever imagine doing. And she was all set to go, and then the pandemic happened, and then we lost Missy because of COVID and schedule and all of that. And so I ended up casting this guy, Ben, who's amazing. But Ben read the raps and was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, wait, what? What's happening? Like, we're gonna actually perform these, you know, like, and it, you know, they're funny, so it's like I felt like it was okay, but that was like a first for me, where I was just like, wait, what? Like, you know, like I have such respect for songwriters, and felt like I was like getting into a lane that I did not belong in. But
yet
it's on film now. Can't go back.
Can't
now.
wait to see it.
Yeah. Same. Do you find character development a different process when you're doing a musical as opposed to a non-musical? Like, do you as a screenwriter have to do anything different if you're developing a character who sings?
Can I jump in on this to say?
Yes.
I've learned a lot. Where it started, though, I would have said yes. Where we're going now, I'd say no, it's great, we're breaking the mold. But I came into it with you've got to have an optimist. If musical comedy female, she's got to be an optimist. An optimist is constantly translated to stupid and wide-eyed. And it was exhausting. And then I think in some ways, going through Frozen, I don't think anyone thought there would be such a response to Elsa, knowing they loved the song, but this woman who's full of wounds and fear and a power she can't control. and then her singing. And so it was an interesting thing to enter into, for me, very my own naivete coming into this and constantly hearing she's got to be perky and optimistic, and optimism sings. And I was like, but what about Les Mis? What about,
Right.
what's optimism?
Yeah.
I'm so confused. And now it's sort of gone to, that's sort of thrown that out more to be that she's got to be, or they've got to be, just real wonderful hot messes inside.
Right. It feels like a great character, a great singing character is a great character, in that he or she or they want something really badly and have a great desire. Like that, to me, is always, in all writing, like something I come back to is like, that simple question that we all ask ourselves is like, what does this character want? And if your character wants something enough, then they can sing, I think, in my experience. Although I know, I think maybe it's Bobby and Kristen Lopez once told me that that guys in non-period stories, it's very hard to get men to sing unless they're orphans.
Yeah,
I've heard that before.
Yes.
I've totally.
Like if they're orphans, we go with it. If they're not orphans, we don't want to hear it. No,
They have said that to me before too.
I guess for me with Jingle Jangle, growing up watching the Willy Wonka, I mean, he was not a happy man. He was a dark, man trying to get to his happy. So when it was time to write Jingle Jangle with Jeronica's Jangle and Forrest Whitaker, I wrote a character that was happy, but he was a dark mofo for most of the movie. The journey was getting him back to the joy that he once had through his granddaughter journey that came in. So I think that for me, I like to deal with the pathos of a character and that, and feel it and then get to the happy.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Kay?
I was just realizing my husband and daughter are leaving for camp.
Oh.
Back there. Well, I was just thinking, like, I didn't want to sound kind of boring in saying, like, I kind of just approach it the same way I would any character, regardless of it being a musical. And I know they break out in song, but and maybe because Cinderella is already arch anyway, it's a fairy tale, so it already has that. So it's not as hard to believe that they break out in song, and it's been done as a musical before. But it's really about what are their wants, what are their worldviews, and David, what you were saying, like what are their arcs, like, and then that's just how I approach every character. And I do try to make every character a full character, like even the minor ones. Like I try to tell the C or D stories, and give them a little bit of weight too. And Jennifer, what you were saying about like what the lady characters should be like, just drives me insane. And it was like,
not anymore.
I had some issues with Cinderella, but yeah. Yeah. I think we still get, like just in other stuff that's not musicals, in terms of likability with women, and
that's the word.
All that, yeah.
Like, is she likable?
Yeah.
She's not that likable.
Yeah.
Let's move into, do any of you have advice on pitching a musical, and what's important to include and consider in conveying your idea, for this type of material?
I sat with Nick Nesbitt and Scott Stuber, and Scott head of film, and Nick is one of the top execs over there. And I just sat and I directed a film for Netflix, and then there was just a general. And then he said, what would you like to do next? And I said, well, I want to do, I told him about this story of Jingle Jangle. So the point I'm making is I just sat and told Scott Stuber a story about an inventor who had lost his way and about what it meant to me. And I wasn't even pitching him. He said, what would I like to do? And before I was over, you could hear a pin drop in the room. And Stuber says, well, he says, can you come back and, he says, no, first he says, that sounds like something we need here on our platform. And I said, what do you mean? He says, can you come back and pitch the whole thing out next week? And I'm like, oh, okay. But I just sat to tell him a story that mattered to me, something that touched my heart. And, you know, and I shared a story with him. And I think that the whole mysticism of pitching, and I got to come in the room and I have to have everything all, and I have to do these cards and I have to have everything out. Nobody cares about the first act and second act and third act structure and a damn pitch. Do they feel these characters? Are they moved? Are they leaning in? Are you touching them? Can they relate? And then everybody's going to figure out all that stuff later. But I think that's the most important. And I always say you can't touch people unless you're first touched. You can't expect people to feel something or be engaged unless you're first engaged, unless you feel something. That's kind of how I bake my cakes.
Got to buy what you're selling.
And I think it's tough because in Disney, we do it in a different way. Most of the time, everything's created from in-house. And if we connect with artists, it's at a different level from out of house that we want to work with, like that. They'll have songs already, or it's people we've worked with before. But I think I ask for even internal pitches is why it's a musical. Why? What does it mean to you that it's a musical? Why do you think it needs to sing? And I think because fundamentally it can that's where you get the greatest understanding of the filmmaker, frankly, when they have to articulate why it sings. But 9 times out of 10, you can feel it when they're pitching. I think to David's point, they don't have to say it's a musical until the end to say, I was thinking of it as a musical, and you go, of course. Or if they say, I'm thinking of a musical, and you're like, oh, all right, tell me more. But you can usually feel it because you're already emotionally connecting with it. And I always like it to I've never looked for a pitch to be perfect. No pun intended. I look for it to be like wonderful and rich, where there's a lot to mine, and that can be different too. So it's hard for me because it's more knowing that our process is an evolution and ours takes years. Tend to really look for the potential versus the sharpness of something, and that you're making exactly what David said. You're making me feel.
But for novices who are on here listening to us, who aren't used to pitching or going in, without a resume and just brand new, my advice would be it all comes down to story. And if you know your story and the idea and the nugget of the idea, and why is it important to tell now? What is it about? And that's where you get your passion. Is there relatability? Is it of the now? Is it something that feels original, and that your story backwards and forwards, because then that passion will the person listening will feel it. Even for Cinderella, like James Corden produced Cinderella, I came in with a sizzle reel with like all my visuals and the whole thing, and did a massive pitch. And I still don't know if it would have been made if James Corden wasn't sitting in the room. So this is to say for all those who are new or novices or whatever, it's that like, it became undeniable, even though, like I just said, James Corden, because the reason I was telling the story is so of the now. It's like, we need a new Cinderella told by a woman. It's never been told by a woman before. And she's active and vocal, and she craves independence. And she wants a career.
James Corden needs to be Cinderella.
Yeah. And so I present to you James Corden as Cinderella. But that's the key for if you're new to pitching, because I know a lot of writers don't want to pitch. You want to sit at home and you want to write. You don't want to be in front of other people, and you do kind of have to put on a show. And that show is the passion that you feel for your idea. And so to understand what your characters are, the character worldviews, make sure your characters are 3-dimensional. And then you can get to a stage in success where you can be as amazing as David is, and David's like pitching something he really cares about, and they're going, well, we think we need that on our platform. Because it's not easy, but what makes it easy is your preparation and your like desire and want and passion.
I would also say, as someone who comes from theater where everything is on spec, there's no such thing as like pitching in theater. There is something about, especially musicals, I think, that the execution is where you find it often, and which is a frustrating thing to say and to know. But I always talk about how Hamilton is like the worst pitch in the world. Like, I think that is a terrible pitch. If someone had come to you and said it's a rap musical about the founding fathers, you would say, well, that sounds terrible. You know what I mean? It's all the way it's executed is the proof, you know, like that. And you can't, the idea of it is not quite, you know, until you see it, you don't know it. And so there is something about actually doing the work and building it and making it that you sometimes, I think, need to do, especially with an original musical. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Okay, we've got 4 minutes left, but I have to ask this question. There's some really good ones in the Q&A, but I have to ask this because we've wanted clarification on this in the library for a long time, and I want to hear it from your mouths. What is it supposed to look like on the page? How do you differentiate between spoken scenes and songs in a screenplay? When you're writing it, formatting it, gonna send it off, what does that look like?
Interesting. I mean, I'm writing something now and I don't have songs, but I have a lot of those. I think Stephen mentioned the monologues of what's going on, so you know their inspiration for songs. And I just put them in actually like a blue, so that they know. But then when I'm putting actual lyrics in, the lyrics, there's like, you know, you set it slightly to the left of the dialogue, it's all in caps. We do at Disney always make the songs a different color. It just makes it easier in text. It makes it easier for everyone. Yeah, so it is literally just really structuring, but same with, you know, when you're doing a script for Broadway, the lyrics tend to be slightly over from the dialogue and all caps. I don't know if other people do it that way.
Does anyone do anything different? Ooh.
Oh, there you go.
Ooh,
Yeah.
But this is regular dialogue, and this is, and I think that's, yes, it was all caps, and all caps. And I try to put in there also some of the stage direction, which will inform the singer on what kind of swag to give it. But yes, it's usually all caps.
Yeah, usually I bold the name of the song at the beginning, usually. I mean, this is really getting into the nitty gritty. And then I've discovered that if you italicize the lyrics, it doesn't take up as much space as if you do.
Ooh, sneaky.
That's why I all cap it.
No.
Yes, right. So depending on what you want to do.
Yeah. If you use Final Draft and you go to the Broadway script, that you can't really use it for screenwriting, but you can steal the lyrics, and because it has a different way, it puts dialogue and action in different places, but you can steal all the lyric elements.
Yeah.
Lauren, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I just did all caps and I would bold the name of the song, but I had no idea how anybody else did it. I'm glad that I wasn't too far off.
People come into the library sometimes and they're like, well, this is how it's done. And I'm like, I'm not sure that is. So I wanted to get like a little bit of clarification.
Yeah, as long as it works and people feel it, I don't think there's any right or wrong, but just so people know that now we're singing the story as opposed to talking it.
Do you guys do, this is what I do when I do it a ton in Pitch Perfect for page count, to have a lower page count, is I'll do 2 lines of lyrics, and then I'll do parens, song continues, ...
Oh,
I didn't do that, but I wish I should have.
That is good.
Yeah, and I would do that quite a bit. I mean, I did it a lot on Cinderella too, because it was just, they're like 120 pages. I was like, I know, but
Yes.
That's amazing. Okay, we have 1 minute left. I'm so sorry to everyone in the audience who had really, really good questions. Like I was totally engrossed, and I'm sorry. But let's do one last little question here just to wrap things up nicely. So it can be a long, uncertain path writing musicals, maybe more so than with other forms of storytelling. What is your favorite part of the process and what keeps you motivated?
Collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, that you're not in this thing alone. And that's the thing, the joy of the filmmaking process for me is collaborating with all the people that are at the top of their game, and they're experts in their fields, and it helps elevate the whole thing.
Yeah. And also just the feeling that what motivates me is the feeling. And very quickly, specific to Cinderella, like we shot most of the movie in the pandemic. And when the world was shut down, you know, and there wasn't live performances happening, like we were getting to see live performances, like, and getting to feel the joy and of what that, you know, it was just so beautiful. I could get emotional just talking about it right now to you guys, but it's just a really special thing. Like, I just think what music does and how it makes you feel is just, there's nothing like it. So that's what always motivates me. That's why I get attracted to stories that have music in them, or if it's about music, because it's just so, I know it's beautiful, you know, and so that's for like,
It
so
breaks down cultural barriers too.
Yeah, and when you have the collaborating, like, and you have the choreographers and you have the singers and you have the, you know, like the actors and the composers and everything, it's just, when it all comes together, it's just really wonderful.
Yeah, and I think it's important for a musical. It's really challenging. I know a lot of people are asking about sort of how you put your own stuff in, if you're speccing it yourself and you're doing it alone. And this is where we say the best thing you can do is actually find some musical partners. They don't have to be stellar names, and, you know, just people who, they bring that voice and they bring that understanding. And because to me, the favorite moment is when I've delivered a bunch of stuff to them and I don't know, and they say, we found something, and then they bring back a song. And then what it does is the entire, as I said, the possibility for what I'm writing changes. And so every single time, the concept of the story to the final, it's exponentially much better. But it's not just because of, you know, you got better along the way, or you got a lot of notes. It's because you re-inspire each other. And I think in understanding the power of the musical voice with the storytelling, and that, like I say, that wrestle, you have to not be so controlling. You really have to lend yourself to it. But I think it's really freeing, because this screenwriting is really hard. And I think and I'm working with Bob and Kristen, is not 1 second of it's easy. I mean, they really are the best at what they do, because they're uncompromisingly good and demand high quality. And yet what happens is you make these magic moments, and you grow as a writer. And I just think it's really important.
Thank you for touching on that. That was a participant question that I wanted to get to, so thanks.
There is something so magical and mystifying about something. If you're the one that first puts forth something, a character, an idea, when a song comes back to you, there's really nothing like it. It's hard to describe. I have the sense animation might feel like that too, where it's, you have this idea and then other brains take it and make it something else that's both yours and theirs and something else altogether. And there's something that's just, you know, it's a cliche, but it's magical.
And it feels like you get a little present, right? Like,
yes,
like a demo, I'm like, oh, I get to listen to a demo. Oh, this is cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I sat with John Legend to write with the 11 o'clock hour. Everyone knows, and theater knows what that is. Song for Jingle Jangle, Make It Work. And he says, "Oh, I think I got it. And I said, "Let me hear it." He said, "I just came up with it. So I'll send you some in a week." So I go back to London. We're in pre-production, and the song comes in my email, and I'm like, "Oh Lord, I'm just praying." I said, "John," I said, so I put on headphones and I'm listening to it downstairs, and tears, I'm just crying. I'm listening to the song. So my mother-in-law, who moved out there with us while we were shooting the movie, she come down, she says, "What's wrong, sugar? You all right?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because this song gonna take me to the Oscars." it ended up getting shortlisted on the Oscars for Best Original Song. So, but it was that moment that I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? John gave me this song for my film. Forget about it. And that's
like, are you listening to all of me? Did he send you all of me?
Oh shit! I wish he would have sung it. Oh. But yeah, but that's how you feel. So Stephen, I know that feeling well.
All right. Well, we've gone a little bit over. I just thank all of you so much. Just the level of knowledge sharing here was, I was really inspired. I could keep going for another hour, but we all have things to do.
This was so fun. It's good to see.
Yeah, it's so good. So hats off.
Congrats to all you guys.
Congrats to everybody. I'm a fan. Great work, everyone.
This
Thanks,
was awesome.
everyone.